Hey everybody, we're here at Artisan Woodturning with Dave Crawford, and today Dave's going to show us his shop, and he's also going to show us how to take a wet log, how should I say this, a log from log to wet turn.
Log to wet turn, so you end up with a rough, what we call a rough bowl blank, and then you set that aside for anywhere from 6 to 8 months to let the wood dry, and then you remount that blank back on the lathe to finish turning it. Because you got to keep in mind we're starting with wet wood. If you're going to turn a large bowl, that wood has to dry. The only way you can dry a solid block of wood all the way through so that you can finish turning it is to wet turn it, take the wood out of the center and off of the sides. So that's what we're going to do today.
We're going to be
This is typical of the way that I'll start the process of turning a large bowl. The number one challenge is where to, number one, get the wood. It's got to be quality wood, meaning it has to be free of defects, and obviously it has to be in a diameter and a length that you can work with. Now this is wood that came from Mesa, Arizona. The crew that took it down contacted me and said they had about half a dozen trees to come down and I could come out and take a look at them. This is Delbergia sisu, is a species, or Indian rosewood. Locally, it's just called sisu as well. Now this is wet wood. These trees came down in probably about a week ago, so they're still prime. And what we're going to do, the process we start with the log is we have to split the log down the middle, which means you take your chainsaw and you rip it right down the middle.
So your bowl comes out of the side,
Yeah.
not a layer?
Yeah, the bowl will come right out of the side, and we'll show you as we cut the log why it's important, at least to me, to do it that way, because it gives great stability to your bowl. So once you cut the log down the middle, you have basically two halves of the bowl, and the upper flat surface is going to be the rim. So when you cut the log, let's say this way, you open it up, rim on the inside. This is going to be the outside of the bowl, or the base on this side. So that's what we're going to do in step one. Now to be able to do this, you have to have obviously a chainsaw that has sufficient power. I get a real phobia about chainsaw chains and keeping them sharp.
Sure.
And as luck would have it, I found out recently that you can go out on the market now and get a diamond carbide tipped chain.
Oh, no way.
And I've got that on my chainsaw now.
Big difference from a regular?
It's a big difference, yeah. It'll last about 10 times longer than a regular chain. It's a little more money, but believe me, it's worth it. Because you want to spend your time turning, not cutting wood.
Right.
Okay, so you want to minimize that. But you get a process going, it moves pretty quick. But there's no doubt you've got to have a good chainsaw to do that. Now the chainsaw I'm using, and I've experimented with different chainsaws, is a Stihl. It's got an 18-inch bar on it, and it has sufficient power. 18 inches is pretty good for what I use. Sometimes I'll tie into a log that has a diameter of 20 inches or more, and then what you end up having to do is do a double rip cut, which is a little tricky, but if you do it, long enough, you develop a skill at it so that you can get the whole inside surface flat. So we'll start on this, and I'm going to mark where I want to cut this. So you see I've marked the pith, and this is real important because you've got a pith on either side, and depending upon how you rip this log, you're going to have the pith line either just above the cut where you won't see it, or you'll have it below. And you've got to remember that where you have that pith, that wood is going to crack there. So if you're looking at where the pith is here, ideally what we want to do is we'll cut probably somewhere right down the middle, because you'll see when we mount this piece on the lathe and we start to rough turn the outside, you'll see where the pith will catch the rim and it'll crack a little bit. You've got to turn all of that off, and we'll look at that a little bit later. If you don't turn it off, it's just going to continue to crack in the drying process, and you could lose your bowl. So I've learned the hard way. I want to hang on to as much wood as I can, but you got to keep in mind that the wood is going to move. If you've got a little crack or check, it's probably going to get bigger. So you want to turn all of that out if you can. So I've marked the bottom too. I kind of know where this is. And believe it or not, the pith will pretty much go straight down here. But on some logs that are, the trunk is tilted a little bit, you know, the pith will be over here on one side. You turn it around and it's over here on the other. So, you know, depending upon how you cut it, you're either going to have one big bowl or two smaller ones when you have to deal with the pith. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Oh yeah.
It'll probably make more sense once we cut it. Okay, now, so we've got our two halves, and if you look on this end, you can see here, this isn't going to be a problem for us because you see the pith is up here, and we've cut that off, so you don't see that center pith and the cracks, checks radiating out, so you're good on this end. And you're good on this end too. So we've got a good piece here. The pith will be on this side. So we've got a good piece to start off with. So what we want to do is get this out of the way. What we want to do now, so what we want to do is scribe a circle on here. Now, this is the top of the bowl. This will be the rim. You have the depth of the bowl. Maybe to give you a better idea, you could look at it this way. There's your bowl right there in the wood, okay? You're going to take it right here. You've got your heartwood, which is darker, and your sapwood on the outside. We want to keep as much sapwood as we can because the contrast between the pale sapwood and the darker heartwood is quite striking. So what I'll do now is I'll take and I'll find the center here, and
that gives you an idea of size.
Yeah. Now what this will do is this gives me an idea of size, and if you notice, probably got the bigger end this way. I don't want to do a whole lot of cutting on the end, so we'll probably take it here, cut this off, but this looks nice and clean here, so you can see I'm just using it to make sure I've got what I need. Now, before I lift that off, one important point, I want to make an indent there because I need to mark the center. That'll come into play a little bit later. Now, when I'm cutting and trimming this piece up, it helps me to mark the outline a little bit here when I'm cutting it, so I know, I'm not taking more wood off than I need to do. So here's the center, and what we're doing is we're going to probably start with a bowl that's 14 inches, okay, if you can see that.
Yep.
So we've got a bowl about 14 inches, which is really a good size for a utility bowl, okay. So what we're going to do is take a chainsaw, we're going to knock off the corners and shape this a little bit, because the more wood you can get off using your chainsaw, and it's fairly easy, the less time you're going to spend turning. So all of this will have to come off, and we'll end up with a rough circle, And here's the top of your bowl, obviously right here. Now, when you're cutting, keep in mind, as I showed you here, the sides of the bowl will come in. So when I'm cutting using my chainsaw, I won't cut straight down. I'll come in at an angle and take that wood off. Because here again, it saves you a little bit of time when you're turning. Top of your bowl here, which will be your rim. You've got your sides coming in a little bit. Now, one of the things that, excuse me, I believe strongly in is recycling. So you look at all this and you've got a lot of offcuts from the logs. And I put these in a pile and I have someone come by once a month and they collect all of that because they burn it for fuel. If it's mesquite, they really like it because mesquite burns very hot. Plus they use that wood to smoke fish and poultry and beef. Yeah, and it's great. So the offcuts don't go to waste. And then I have a neighbor down the street who has a vegetable garden. And this is great stuff for mulch, and she uses this in her garden. So everything you see here, it doesn't go to the dump, doesn't get set at the curb to be picked up. Everything is used. So now that we've got this plank, you can see
A little more manageable.
a little more manageable how the sides are coming in. Here's the center, this is going to be the bottom. So let's carry this into the workshop.